Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. I'm Patrick Verno. I'm the president of Emory Leadership Group, as well as the host of the podcast, Learning from Leaders, and the soon to be released, I'm the author, I guess, of the soon to be released book, The Leadership Bridge. And as I had mentioned in the post that I had put down about this LinkedIn Live, what I wanted to talk about is onboarding and leadership as part of onboarding. And I think it's so important. Now, this is a talk that I did, I think it's 3 or maybe even 4 years ago for a group called DisruptHR, that I floated this idea out there in terms of including leadership development as part of onboarding. And what got me to think about it again was an article that I just saw recently, and it was a survey by a global consulting firm, Grant Thornton. And what they did was they surveyed 5,000 individuals that had recently changed jobs. And what they found was that 40% of those people that had recently changed jobs were actually looking again for a new job. And it made me think back to one of the examples that I used in that talk 3 or 4 years ago, in that one of the surveys that I had seen by another consulting firm suggested that people are 10 times more likely to leave an organization in the first year of employment than at any other point in their career with that company. And the next time, or the next highest on that, was around their anniversary dates. And both of those make sense to me, right? The first is around onboarding, that if I feel as though the organization I'm with hasn't delivered on what they said they were going to deliver in terms of employment, if I don't feel as though I belong with this organization, then I'm more likely to leave. I'm questioning, what did I do? Why did I decide to come here? This is not what I thought it was going to be. And then the second one is around anniversaries, where people are probably saying, here I am 4 years into this, and do I really want to be here for a fifth year? So when I talk about onboarding and leadership development, I think it also applies right now to the push that we're seeing around diversity, equity, and inclusion in organizations. That there are, I think, organizations or individuals that don't maybe see that there's a need for it because they think that this isn't a problem at their organization. Now, my belief is that we should talk about this in terms of behaviors that address DEI without necessarily having to call it diversity, equity, and inclusion. They're just naturally behaviors that by default address those three things. So we don't have to label it as this is what we're doing, so much as we have to say these are the behaviors that we're going to promote in this organization. And I do believe there is a seismic shift that's going on right now. There is a reordering between the relationship of labor and capital within organizations. And I think those leaders, those organizations that want to resist that don't think this is the case, they're going to be the ones holding the bag. This is a different environment. And I'm not going to say that this is forever, that it won't shift back, but in the environment, I would say for the foreseeable future, there is a reordering, and employees really have a great deal more say in terms of what they're willing to do and who they're willing to do it for in a work environment. And again, those organizations, those leaders that understand this are really going to come out on top. They'll be the ones that will, I think, attract the best employees. They'll develop the best employees, and I believe also they'll retain the best employees because they've created a culture and environment based on a set of behaviors. And that really is what leads me to the next part of this, is that I want to talk about what those behaviors are. I think that within an organization, we could start doing right out of the gate. And it revolves around a model that I use called cables. And it's based on 6 behaviors. And I talk about this in terms of building bridges. That's really all we do in our relationships, whether it's as a leader, working with those people that report to me. I'm building bridges, individual bridges, really, with each of them. And it's the result of my behaviors that determines what type of bridge I'm going to build here. How strong is this thing going to be? And the stronger it is, the more stress it's going to be able to withstand without falling down, or without needing, as much repair work on it. It's as simple as that. So when we talk about cables, this first cable that builds this bridge, we talk about congruence. So if you think about it from a standpoint of onboarding in an organization, wouldn't it be great when people come on board and they start to understand that one of the behaviors that's important here is talking about alignment. What we say and what we do are the same things. This provides an environment where people start to see, okay, here are the values that we say we stand for as an organization. Is my behavior and are the decisions I'm making as an employee here, are they in alignment with what we say we stand for as an organization? Now, I'll take a step back here and say, you can see where, to me, even recruiting people to come work for my company, this can become very valuable, right? Let's let people know before they get here what things we stand for, what this organization is all about. Because I think when we do that, right, maybe we reduce some of this 40% that we've seen of people that are looking for other jobs, because I would guess that those people are like, what I was told this organization was about and what I'm experiencing are not the same thing. They're different. They're out of alignment. There's no congruence here. Or maybe it's my manager. My manager is not congruent or is not consistent. Some people get treated better than other people do here. And because of that, I'm not going to leave. Now, as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion, we can really put equity into that, right? So when we're congruent with what we say our values are, we automatically promote equity within this organization. So the next we move on to appreciation, and that's about recognizing people for who they are, their personalities, their backgrounds, where they come from. That really is about diversity. When we're appreciating people for who they are and also what they do, again, right out of the gate as part of onboarding, we start to set the tone of this is what we do in this organization. We're going to recognize diversity here. That's part of appreciation. So we're already hitting two of those three things that we talk about in diversity, equity, and inclusion within an organization, which is really part of onboarding too. So the next we talk about belongingness within an organization. How do we create this inclusion that we need? And when we have belonging and inclusion, we have what's called psychological safety. And from an organizational standpoint, we get stronger. We know the research that's out there that demonstrates this too, that those organizations that experience, the people that work for those organizations experience psychological safety, thrive. And it makes perfect sense that if I'm in an organization where I feel as though I can make people aware of things that might not be going well here or things that we could improve on, without fear of being ridiculed or retaliated against or maybe even ignored, the organization gets stronger because of that. In work that I've done with organization for years, especially when there are challenges or problems, I will often say to the executives that hire me that the solutions, the answers to the problems that this organization is experiencing are right within the walls of this organization. The people that are here, they're the ones that know how to solve these things, but oftentimes they don't feel as though they're included in the solution because maybe they're, too far down the line in terms of what their titles are, that people think that they don't have any value to be able to provide the solution. And that's clearly not the case. They probably have more insight as to what's really going on than an executive that's probably more removed from the day-to-day operations. So the next we talk about listening, and I think it's such an important component to what we're talking about here in terms of onboarding, right? Teaching people the value of listening and what it means to really develop that skill of listening, not just listening with our eyes, which is watching for body language, different things like that, facial expressions, listening with our ears when we listen for individuals' tones of voices, the words that they use, the pace that they speak at. We also listen from a standpoint of curiosity. We listen with our mind, of really trying to take a step back and not be reactive when people are saying things to us, but really try and pause and understand, why are they saying what they're saying? What does it mean? And lastly, listening with empathy. And that requires us to listen to other people, just like if it was reversed, how would I want somebody to listen to me if this was a problem that I was having? And when we activate all four of those components of listening, we are fully engaged with somebody else. We can't be doing other things. We really can't even multitask when we're truly listening with all four of those different components. And the earlier people can learn about effective listening, it benefits the entire organization. So we then talk about empathy. This is our next cable. Well, within an organization, right, it hits on, again, when we talk about diversity, or equity even, or inclusion, all of those things are hit in regards to dealing with the behavior of empathy, putting ourselves in somebody else's shoes. How would I want to be treated? What's it like to be where they are? Have I really tried to think of things from their perspective? How important that is. And then the last one we talk about is specifics, and this is about clear expectations. So within an organization, I think this one is vitally important. And from a couple different perspectives, right? I go back to this idea of recruitment, right? Having clear expectations for people. What does the job function require here? What will be expected of you before you're hired? I was speaking with somebody the other day, and the conversation came up about millennials again, and how, you know, they want to be the CEOs of the organization right out of the gate. And I would argue that I'm a Gen Xer. I would say that there were many people at that age, right? When you're starting out, you have a lot of excitement and belief that you can make a difference. I think less about trying to tamp that down. And I think more about setting, what are clear expectations here? What are the growth paths here? And how do you get promoted here or developed here within this organization? I think the clearer organizations are in terms of what the expectations will be when somebody comes on board, the less chance you're going to have this conflict or people that are unhappy, because they clearly knew what was the expectation when they started employment here and what the paths were that were going to be available to them. I'm going to circle back around to the front of this again around congruence, is that if there's an area that I see, is that in terms of problems, it's that clear expectations, right, are not followed through on, right? They're clear maybe, but we don't take ownership in them. We don't adhere to them. So we're back to the beginning of this. There's a lack of congruence. We don't walk the talk with what we say our clear expectations are. And I think if we combine that as part of onboarding, what we do is we create an environment where we give people, I think, the license and the ownership to say, we're an organization that is very much about setting clear expectations, to make sure that we know what we need from each other to be successful here. And that also we take ownership in those, meaning that we're gonna call each other out. We're gonna hold each other to what we say that we stand for. We all have the ability to do that. So that's it. We talk about cables as being, to me, the framework of how you really can establish, I think, a greater organization right from the get-go, right from where the employees are. And on top of that, I think, why wait 2 years to start developing leaders? We need more leaders today, not in 2 years. And I think when you create leadership development as part of your onboarding, what you will find is that there are certain people that are going to self-select. They're going to take those behaviors and they're going to magnify those. And if you think about this from the standpoint of building better bridges, those people that say, I'm all about those behaviors, I see the value of them, those behaviors inspire followers to say yes to your requests more often because you've built a stronger bridge. So again, I hope in this, you're able to maybe take one of those and work on them over the week, next week, where you say, I'm going to work on just specifics, clear expectations. Or maybe within your organization, you're going to look and say, how can we start to look at creating onboarding within our organization and add leadership to that. So until the next time we're able to connect, I hope you're able to go out there and utilize some of the things that we've talked about, and also to rise above your best.